In this video I'm going to be having a look at who might be arriving in the next expansion for Warcry, and why that might very well be the Kruleboyz. Hi, so I'm David, this is Hobby Jackal. Let's take a look at what might be arriving in the final expansion for this season of Warcry, which is going to be due in or around May 2023. So the penultimate Warcry expansion, Bloodhunt, is now with us, and as with Sundered Fate, it's dropped with some tantalising hints of what we might see next. As a quick bit of background, this season an edition of Warcry opened with Heart of Ghur. The core book and Rot and Ruin Warband book included featured a map of the Gnarlwood littered with faction icons and locations, which set the interwebs aflame with speculation. Whilst the majority of the icons have turned out to simply relate to additional narrative strands and points of interest, notably the 3 Chaos God icons included in the very first maps have had narrative ties to a warband from each expansion, namely the Skinslough Fen of the Rotmire Creed, the Weird Lights of the Jade Obelisk, and the Bloodmad Ravage of the Claws of Karanak. These are striking for their design work, featuring higher coloration and effects leaching into the map, which make them stand out from everything else included. A little more on this later. When the first expansion, Sundered Fate, arrived, it dropped with some additions to the map, included in its own warband tome, Stealth and Stone. It featured a number of new icons relating to the 2 warbands featured, but also teasingly dropped in the Askurgan Bone Monasteries. These were not mentioned anywhere else in the entire book, and in my prediction video I'd rather excitedly linked this icon to the deluded vampiric flesh-eater courts, whereas we actually ended up with Soulblight Gravelords named the Askurgan Trueblades. What's important is this addition tied directly into the next box contents. Now Warcry Bloodhunt presents us with a 3rd edition of this map, building on the icons added within Sundered Fate. This time we're getting Grozic's Gouge, which looks like a perfect rendition of a Kruleboyz symbol, and Drake's Rest, which is equally a direct copy of the existing Stormcast Eternal Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber. So if these do indeed indicate a new warband and we're only getting 1 plus the traditional Chaos warband, my money's now on the Kruleboyz. When the expansions were first announced and we were told we wouldn't be seeing only Chaos in these boxes, 2 fan theories crawled their way to the top of the pile, neither of which has been proven incorrect by releases to date. The first pitch is that we'll see a warband for each Grand Alliance throughout these expansions. Thus far we've had Heart of Ghur pitching Chaos versus Chaos, Sundered Fate pitching Chaos versus Order, and Bloodhunt pitching Chaos against Death. And so the theory goes that we'll see Chaos versus Destruction in Nightmare Quest. So the Kruleboyz fit this bill. The other pattern suggests that we'll get a warband for each of the main Chaos gods across each box. We've had this for Nurgle, Tzeentch and Khorne so far, and interestingly each was featured on the original map we saw in glorious Technicolor. Therefore popular opinion follows that Slaanesh will feature in Nightmare Quest. However, if we're looking at the map, a Slaaneshi symbol is still strikingly absent. I consider there still being 2 good pro-Slaanesh arguments. Firstly, it's neat, one of all 4. Secondly, we're at a point where we can make a very good guess as to which battle tomes are arriving for Age of Sigmar next based on who's had a book this edition. These 2 Chaos books due in the summer are almost definitely Blades of Khorne and Hedonites of Slaanesh, meaning their warbands could be included. This isn't a given of course, and Seraphon for instance aren't arriving until midsummer, but it's just neat from a release perspective. Now, curiously, the closest visual match to the 3 Chaos God icons across these maps is the Tainted Wound. If you had to pick 4 which stand out, it's the 3 Chaos Gods and then this Chaos Undivided icon. It could be linked to the warband we'll find in this next box, and is positioned neatly next to where the Kruleboyz appear, which would match what we've seen for the Jade Obelisk and Hunters of Huanchi, and then the Claws of Karanak and Askurgan Trueblades. Of course, from a narrative perspective, there's still nothing stopping the Kruleboyz facing off against the Stormcast, with these spread out icons simply relating to points of interest for their warbands. And we'll also note that there's this outstanding Rumour engine from October 2022, which looks very Kruleboyz to me. So I'll finish up this video on some further points to consider, and I'd love to hear your ideas in the comments too. So firstly, it should go without saying this is total speculation, and there's a chance the team behind these icons are just rascals. They could mean nothing other than Kruleboyz and Stormcast are loitering about the Gnarlwood, following on from the Dominion narrative. Additionally, the icons showing a spitting image of existing Kruleboyz and Stormcast Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber, warband icons that we've already seen for Warcry. And they're not a new warband icon like we saw for the Askurgan Trueblades, so assuming these are like for like is a bit of an assumption. Finally, the Tainted Wound has already had some flavour text. It featured in the Rotten Ruin book, and there was nothing there to suggest that a Chaos Warband was specifically associated with this location. Also from the description, you do not want to holiday there. And because speculation is fun, I'm going to go for a bit of a left field random prediction and just throw my hat in the ring and say I think Kruleboyz versus the auxiliary Stormcast potentially arriving in fancy new Thunderstrike armour and continuing the Dominion narrative are going to be the warbands we're going to see in the next box. Screw the Chaos God pattern and the wording of Nightmare Quest, which doesn't really fit that. It could happen. So what do you think? Do you think Slaanesh is just going to rock up anyway? Do you think the Kruleboyz are a complete red herring and I'm being a bit of a numpty? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching, and here and here and here or somewhere like that, a load of videos that I've also done will be appearing if you want to click on them and have a watch. Anyway, thanks very much, take care, and I'll see you in the comments. Cheers.